Okay, so we've now got a number of people in the lobby, so I think it's about time we get kick-started. So welcome everybody into today's Celebrity Speaker Game here with Andy. So Andy is currently up in Brisbane, but one thing about Andy is that he loves to travel the world and, experience bridge in a whole heap of different places, doing lots of wonderful things, such as bridge holidays, for instance, in Russia and all over the place. But tell us about your experience traveling with bridge, Andy, just in the various different capacities that you've had. I know that you've represented Australia, you've captained Australian teams, you've worked teaching bridge holidays, and most recently you've semi-shifted across to WA to take on the role as the head teacher at the WA Bridge Club. So tell us about those.
Yeah, so traveling with bridge, initially it started out to be, I guess it still is, very exciting. As you all know, traveling to a different country that you've never been before, very exciting. I could even remember my very first international tournament. I think that was how long ago was it? 2006, maybe. I think that was for the World Schools team in Thailand and Bangkok. I remember it was it was very, very surreal. And the Australian schools team, we were a bit of an underdog, and eventually we came fourth, and no one really expected that. Soon after that, a lot more for bridge. Maybe these days, obviously, can't travel to any place in the world at the moment. But even pre-COVID, traveling now seems a bit more stressful, I guess. I guess if you're going to an exciting tournament, it's pretty fun. But if you're going to a very serious tournament like in the States, it's all about, being rested well and, staying hydrated and just being on focus because, one, as all bridge players, we all know that one costly mistake can cost the match. And these days I have been teaching over in Perth at the WABC, WA Bridge Club. It's a very fascinating club. It's very big. It's got heaps of members, and I do enjoy my time teaching over there. But obviously, the travel to Perth is not only long, but these days it's very, very stressful.
Yeah, Mark McGowan doesn't like us Eastern Siders at the moment. So you brought up one interesting thing, I think, which is just how important it is to be prepared for any tournament that you're going into, especially if you are playing internationally, to be well hydrated and well rested. So I guess that's something that you would have seen as a player and also just captaining different teams around the place. Do you have any tips for how people, just in terms of their normal games, might be able to focus in for a session right from the start? Because I know, especially at the international level, Australians seem to struggle with the last few boards, it seems, in a set, and potentially also those first boards. But I also feel like that's kind of something that a lot of players, just in terms of an everyday duplicate or an everyday session, would find as well. So have you got any tips for players there?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of areas that, bridge players feel can improve on. The all well-known, first board syndrome and the last board syndrome. That doesn't really always happen in Australians, but any bridge player from around the world. When you go into a match, especially in a teams match, as opposed to a duplicate, on the first board, you're thinking, this is just the first board, you're still not really in the zone. But I guess, when you're playing internationally, what you have to try and do is maybe read your bridge system notes, or maybe bid out a couple of hands before the actual match, just so your head's in the right way to begin the match. And obviously for the last board syndrome, you just have to try and pretend it's not the last board. Quite often it's very hard to do, but I can certainly say for myself that certainly lost quite a lot of imps on the last board, just because you take it a bit too easy. It's a bit like, when you're facing against another team and you think the other team is supposedly much weaker on paper, what a lot of people do is, I think it's a mistake. That is, when you're playing against a weaker pair or a weaker team, you just automatically assume you're going to win. And that's basically your downfall, because once you assume you're going to win, you're going to take things a bit too easy, and at some point you'll be making more costly errors than not. When it comes to international tournaments, I mean, I guess not everyone here will play international, but for myself, like for example, flying to Europe or flying to the States, time zone obviously is a big issue. So you have to try and get there a couple of days, even a few days beforehand. So some tips I can give is, definitely stay hydrated. Water is your best friend in bridge. I mean, thinking for 3 hours, 3 hours straight can be quite tedious. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Welcome into the lobby if you have just joined us. So it's Laura here. I'm interviewing Andy, but if you have any questions as well, just type them into the chat. So one of the things you mentioned, Andy, was just how if people go into a match kind of expecting that they can win, that's going to be their downfall. They'll go in thinking that they've got a nice, easy match, and as a result, kind of take their foot off the pedal and, often end up not having a successful outcome. Would you prefer to go into your matches as the underdog or as the favorite in a match?
Always the underdog. Why? Well, I sort of speak from experience. What year is it? 2021? 2 years ago. So basically, the last big tournament that I played pre-COVID was with Liam Milne. It was 2019. One of the U.S. Nationals. It was the Risinger in the States. Basically, this is probably one of, or if not the most difficult tournament in the world. Because playing Risinger where the form of scoring is border match. Border match just means it's like a teams match, but you either win the board or you lose the board or you tie the board. So every trick, every over trick, every under trick is important. It's sort of like pairs combined with teams. You're playing like a team combo, but it's sort of pairs type of scoring where every trick matters. And just being there, obviously pretty much every team is a world-class team, world-class players, whether it be Americans or Europeans or Asians. They're all world-class, and just playing there, not everyone sort of knew myself or Liam, and being the underdog, sometimes you get into positions where I mean, I don't really want to say this, but sometimes in the positions where you have to sort of judge the level or the skill level of your opponents. If they're very good, then you expect them to make this type of play, and if you think they're not very good, then you can expect them not to be able to make this type of play. So being the underdog, if you can make good plays, your opponent will assume that you aren't capable of doing that. So that way you can win quite easily. I've certainly had quite a few successes with that. I mean, most notably, I remember one board against Michael Rosenberg. I think the hand was something like, what did I have? That's right. I had like a 2-2-2-7 shape with, I think, the ace of spades and 7 solid clubs. I think my partner passes dealer, Michael Rosenberg on my right, opened a club. And I thought, well, I mean, this is border match, want to get into no trumps. So I decided to do a cheeky 1-no trump overcall. Went past on my left. My partner eventually raised a 3-no trump. He had about 10 or 11 points. Lee came down was a small spade, and I remember dummy having jack third spade opposite my ace double spade. So I knew they got off to a good lead with a spade, knocking out my ace. But I only had 7 running club tricks after that, 8 top tricks. In my red suits, unfortunately, my partner didn't have any aces. I think in the hearts was something like king queen, and the diamonds were king jack. I think I also had the queen of diamonds or something, because I remember thinking to myself, well, I could win the ace of spades and then run off my 7 clubs to take 8 tricks and go 1 down. Or I can try and be a bit sneaky and, maybe play a diamond, just sneak a diamond trick through and try to make my contract. But this will be at the heavy cost of potentially going down even more, because after they win the ace of diamonds, they can cash a spades and play a heart. So I could lose a lot more. And even though Michael Rosenberg and his partner, world-class pair, sitting against me, knowing myself, I'm always very greedy. When there's an option of being greedy or pessimistic, I take the greedy option. And I played a diamond, and he smoothly ducked his ace. And then that's when I laid down my hand saying, 9 tricks. So I would always prefer being the underdog.
Yeah, well done. I think that brings up an interesting question a lot of players have, which is when you're in situations like you were, what do you do? Do you cash out for your one off, or do you take a chance that you might be able to make your contract? And I love that you've said, yes, I'm a greedy player and I'm really optimistic. But I think that one thing that a lot of people do is we get so caught up in just our own perception on our hand and the fact that we know we can go down. But don't forget that the opponents don't have that same information. And I think it's really important for players to, yeah, comprehend what that might mean. One of my favorite things to work on in defense is watching what Declare is doing and trying to figure out what they're trying to do in the card play and how I might be able to counter that. Defense is a pretty tricky area to tackle, especially for sort of newer players. Any tips for people on just some really good strategies that are pretty broadly applicable in defense?
Specifically on defense, I guess I do agree with you. Defense is probably the most difficult area in bridge. I mean, some people might say bidding or declare play. I mean, I guess we all go through different phases. I mean, I certainly been through those phases, and I think at the end of the day, defense is most likely the most difficult aspect of bridge, just because you only have dummy to help you out with, and you need to try and trust partner's signal. I'm sure most of us here have been in situations where you're thinking, partner, I know you've played that card, but I don't know if I can trust your signal or not. In terms of how we go about improving defense, I would say probably a similar thing that I mentioned before. That is definitely stay focused. Probably, for example, the most important card or cards to look at, obviously a trick one. That's when partner gives a signal. And the next one is when partner gives the first discard. I think those two are the most valuable or the most important information you can receive or as well as give on defense. For the inexperienced players, I mean, trying to work out what Declarer's plan or what Declarer's trying to do. Now that I guess at the end of the day it takes experience to sort of gets up to speed in terms of thinking about that. But if you're not that great, that's okay. I mean, we've all been there. Just take it slowly. Firstly, just concentrate on you and your partner's defense, and then maybe slowly move up your way, and then you can start thinking about what Declare is trying to do. Yeah, that's probably my number one suggestion for defense. Yeah, as well as finding a partner they can trust.
Yeah, I was about to say that defense, one of the other tricky parts about it is, of course, it's not just you, it's your partner as well. And being able to find that harmony that you mentioned to be able to execute those really cool plays and just generally be on the same wavelength.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, my current partner, Nabil Edgerton, a very, very good player. We sort of brought up together a long time ago. What's this? Since 2005, and we've been on and off in terms of our partnership. I remember this one time in 2012 in the World Championships, in the World Junior Championships in China. We were playing against Bulgaria on Viewgraph, and I remember our opponent, our Bulgarian declarer, I don't know, was in 3-no trumps or 4 hearts, I don't quite remember. And, we defended and we got to a 2-card ending. 2-card ending, Declare played a card, and it was my turn to play, and I had to find the right discard. Now, usually in 2-card ending, I would say to myself, well, if you're thinking about it, if you're in the tank and it's 2-card ending, you probably haven't been focusing for the entire hand, because 2-card endings should be quite easy to get right. But here I was sitting there, because I remember every single card that my partner played, my Nabil played, and he gave me a signal, and I was in doubt about that signal. And I literally was sitting there for about 5 or 10 minutes just on this trick alone. I had to try and figure out everything in terms of the bidding, in terms of how Declarer played, or rather, what Declarer may or may not have bid if he had this card or this other card. And eventually, I made my discard, meaning that I took the option of not trusting my partner's signal. And it turned out to be right, because at the end he went, "Oh my God, sorry, Andy." And that was a stupid discard, a lazy discard. So that's what I mean. Like, your first discard, your first signal can be probably the most important one on defense.
Well done for you for working that out. I have to admit that I think that people start to play signals a lot of the time, and they get so caught up in what their partner signaled. And in reality, even as you say, at the very top level, Nabil made either a wrong signal or a lazy signal, and just wasn't thinking about signaling to you. And that could have had drastic consequences on that board. So I think even when people do start to play signals, it should definitely be bridge first, and signals need to be the thing that you fall back on if you're really
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, I mean, one common mistake that I see quite a lot of my students from Perth, or not even just Perth, just in general, is that signaling, I mean, it can be fun, it can be easy to give a signal, but I think what a lot of players tend to do is that they view signals as a black and white type of situation. That is, let's say, oh, a partner made an encouraging discard in the heart suit, so he must want a heart. Or maybe people think, okay, if discard an encouraging heart, you must play a heart as at your first opportunity, or otherwise I'm not going to be a partner again. No, it's not like that. Signals, it's more about information saying, I have something useful in this suit. It may be a good idea to change to this suit or continue with this suit. It's it's not just black and white. It's more more bridge thinking in terms of partner has shown some interest or disinterest in a particular suit, and then it's up to you to try and work out what the best way forward for the defense is. So, I mean, that's why I think defense is one of the most difficult aspects in bridge, because there's, believe it or not, there's a lot more thinking to do.
Yeah. Speaking of, I guess, breaking bridge down into different areas such as defense, declare play, bidding, even slam bidding or part score battles, on the spot here, but what do you think is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness as bridge player? Because I'm pretty keen to find that out so I know how to exploit it at the table.
I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours.
Let me tell you, I swear I'm yours. You go first.
All right, I'll go first. That's how we play it. I think my biggest strength in terms of the area would be, I was going to say bidding, but bidding's quite broad. Probably slam bidding's not my strongest point, but in terms of like competitive bidding or constructive bidding, that's not to do with slam. That's probably my strongest strength, just because I like to be quite thoughtful in the bidding. Thoughtful meaning sometimes being truthful, sometimes not being as truthful, and knowing in which situations I can apply which type of scenario. My biggest weakness, I would say, might be pretty close between defense or declare play. I would probably say defense. Yeah, probably defense. I mean, because I remember more often than not, I've been in defensive situations where I thought to myself, well, I have no idea what to do. I would like to ask my opponents to play the next board while I think about this hand and come back to this hand later. So yeah, defense will be my probably biggest weakness. So what about yours, Laura?
Well, I was just thinking that's going to work out really well for me because I don't think that anyone's ever told me that I don't bid enough. So I'll be doing lots of bidding and declaring and put you on defense a bit more.
That's
Interesting
true.
that both of those things that you mentioned are card play related. I know that a lot of the time, and even coming into people who have friends and things that are learning bridge later in life, they find that if they played cards as a child growing up at holidays or just around the house, that a lot of the time they seem to get a lot better bridge scores. They go into bridge thinking about it a lot better. I was just wondering if your family did play a lot of cards when you were a kid, or if you had to play a bit of catch up there when you started playing bridge.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say my family was like heavily on cards, but we did play the odd card games on a Friday evening or a Saturday evening, but it wasn't too. Just trying to remember what games that we played, but no, we did play quite a bit of card games, even playing with my cousins as well. I remember learning my first card game when I was what, maybe 7 years old. Yeah, but I mean that only lasted for like a couple of years. But then afterwards, my family just didn't play any more cards, and I guess I didn't really play that much until I guess in high school, where my friends in high school just introduced one of them introduced all of us to bridge, or a variation of bridge.
From memory, you've told me this story before about that variation of bridge, and yes, it was quite challenging. Do you want to recap that
Oh
for
yeah.
everybody?
All right, I will. So I don't know what the name of this variation is, but it was the type of bridge. I mean, we played it during our lunch times in high school, so it was actually quite fun. Where it's basically the same as our contract bridge, but a couple of minor differences. One of them was there was no dummy, meaning that everyone participated in the play, which meant there's not too much thinking involved. It's more about praying and hoping. I remember my partner and I on the train back home once bid all the way up to 7 clubs, and we somehow managed to make all 13 tricks. That was quite remarkable. The other differences were in the bidding. Bidding was all the same. You have all the same bids, but there were 2 extra denominations. One of them was called small no trumps, that was situated in the lowest rank, so even below clubs. Small no trumps was it basically played essentially the same as no trumps, but it gives new meaning to small cards or yabras. That is, 2 was the highest card, so it's basically reverse order. 2 is the highest, and ace was the smallest. So you'll be counting points like 4 high card points for every two you had. 2, 3, 4, 5s. They were your best friend. I mean, this made it more interesting or more exciting in the bidding, because even with bad cards, you can still bid in the auction. The second denomination was it was called a middle no trump. This was ranked right in the middle, so between diamonds and hearts. And once again, it's also played as no trumps, but the most middle card was the highest card, 7. Then it goes 8, then 6, 9, 5, 10, 4, Jack 3, Queen 2, King, Ace. It was up, down, up, down, up, down, and obviously that's quite mind-boggling, but every time you play, you have to sort of think, does my 9 beat a 4? Does my 3 beat a Queen? I'm not too sure. You sort of have to think a lot more, but it was quite fun.
That is such a crazy version of the game, and it's quite funny because I know that people think that learning bridge is absolutely mind-boggling. Imagine starting with that. Now
Yeah,
it's 2 minutes before game time, which is quite soon. Everybody's going to be whisked away to their table for the session. So thank you very much, Tandy, for giving us his insight before the game. After the session today, he'll join us in the post-game lobby to discuss some of their hands. Thanks,
yeah.
Andy.
So everyone, make sure you have a couple of glasses of water.
Yeah, keep
When you play these
hydrated.
16 boards, keep hydrated and trust your partner's signal, or rather, first signal, most important one. So yeah, good luck and enjoy your game.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.